Well, hello, everybody. We are just about there, 2 o'clock. We said we'd start at 2 o'clock. So welcome to our Zoom. You probably won't be able to speak, but hopefully you can hear me. Yeah, I can see my friend Chris Porter. Can you wave if you can hear me? Yeah, that's cool. So welcome to our Zoom. I must confess, I should have turned this into a webinar, really. That would have been a lot easier, but I only expected about 15 or 20 of my friends to join me. I had no idea over 80 people would register for this. So it's that's why you're all on mute. But I really want you to join in the chat. As you can see down the bottom, there's a chat feature, so you can hit that and you can make comment, you can share what you're doing, you can and everybody can see it, and you can ask questions, and we'll get back to you with those questions. So welcome this afternoon to this new normal of church life, which is online. I don't know about you, but I seem to spend my entire life on Zoom these days. I used to get in my car and drive to meetings, and now I just walk to my kitchen or my studio, as I've renamed it. And you're probably all doing the same. I really hope this conversation with Dave Adamson from North Point Community Church will be helpful to you, whatever stage you are at in terms of online church. One of the things I want to do before we dive into a conversation with Dave is just to recognize that on this call, there are people from all different church backgrounds. So some of us have got churches with 30 or 40 people in. Some of us have got churches with 300 or 400 people in. There's a few people on this call who've got churches with over 1,000 people in. And some of us have been doing online church for the past 12 months, 2 years, 5 years. For others of us, it's been the past 2 weeks. And it's a whole brand new learning experience for us. So this crisis has forced our hand for many of us. And so I'm going to ask Dave 3 main questions, and you can join in with those questions as well. But 3 main questions I want to get out of Dave today. First question is, how do we continue to create content when we can't even get in our cars and drive to our church buildings? We can't talk to our camera teams or our teenagers who are good with all this technology. It's just me in my bedroom or me in my kitchen. How do I continue to create content that works for the adults in our church and the kids in our church and the young people in our church? So we'll hear from Dave on that. I also want to ask Dave how we take the momentum of Sundays into the rest of the week. So we might put a lot of energy and effort into producing some kind of Sunday morning online church experience. But how do we harness that energy and effort into Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday? I mean, as pastors, we want our people to have an all week, everyday faith, not just a Sunday faith. And this gives us an amazing opportunity to do that. But how do we leverage it? How do we maximize that potential? So we'll talk to Dave about that. And the third one is just about technology. None of us have got Disney budgets. We've all got church budgets. So can I do this just on an iPhone? I mean, how do we create all this stuff on a limited budget? What kind of technology do we need? Should we use YouTube, Instagram? You know, how expensive is it? Can we do it cheaply? So we'll talk a bit to Dave about technology as well. So please join in the conversation. You can chat at the bottom. Lots of you are doing that already. Join in with the chat. My friend Matthew, or my son Matthew actually, who is a social media pastor, a media pastor, and a worship leader, and a service programming director of the Baptist Church in Finchampstead, just south of London. So Matt's here with me. He's self-isolating with us in our family. And he's going to answer some of your questions and collate your questions so we can get them to Dave. So you can do them via the chat. You can do them online. If you want to ask questions to Dave via Twitter or via Instagram, you can use the hashtag AskDave. I noticed he's trending all around the world. There's over 1,000 people asking Dave about this at the moment. So without more ado, let's dive on and talk to Aussie Dave. How are you doing this morning, Dave?
I'm good, man. How are you?
Yeah, doing really well, thank you, actually. Our family seem to be well. Tell me a little bit about your situation. You're in Atlanta right now. What's it like in America right now? What's the situation for you?
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. A lot of states have put on full lockdowns, and just yesterday the president came out and said that we all are basically on stay-at-home orders until the end of April, pushing it past what he'd said a week ago, which was April 12th, Easter. He wanted it open by Easter, which, all things considered, probably a good time for us to come out, considering that's what Jesus did, right? He came out he came outside on that Easter Sunday as well. But yesterday he pushed it back to April 30th. So essentially we're all on lockdown for another 30 days. And we're able to go and get supermarket supplies if we need them, or go to the pharmacy. That's basically it. So we're just trying to not go out as much as we can.
So a little bit of your history then. What's an Australian doing in Atlanta?
Yeah, great question. Part of the reason is I can't get back into Australia at the moment because Australia is on lockdown as well. And I know, speaking to all the people in the UK, the irony of Australia being closed off, right? Because, we started as a prison, now it's become a prison again, essentially. So I've been living in the US for 13 years. I came here to start a church online 13 years ago for a church in New Jersey. And about six or so years ago, 6.5 years ago, I moved to Atlanta to become, to start working as a pastor at North Point here in Atlanta. So my role is all about social media and connecting with people online. For us, for the past couple of years, that's been, leveraging things like podcasts and YouTube and live streams and social media to connect with people during the week. So I'm fortunate enough that our church has been set up for online church for many, many years. So for us, this is been a very smooth transition. Obviously difficult. We don't want these circumstances, but it's been a kind of an easier transition because we've been doing this for so long.
So what does online church at North Point look like right now? I mean, how many people are you reaching? How are you managing to do it? What's a big church like your church doing in this situation?
Yeah, so we are fortunate enough that our team is so far planned ahead that we are able to record a whole bunch of messages and services before really the lockdown started to happen. And so we've got a couple of services, a couple of weeks worth of services already recorded and ready to stream. But we're doing that from an auditorium with a reduced production team. But we haven't done that for a couple of maybe a week now, because A, we were so far in advance, and B, things started to close down a lot quicker. But our services, when we stream them online, we stream once once on a Sunday at 9 o'clock. We push it out to all of our campuses so that people can watch it as a simulated live at 9 a.m. And then from the end of that service onwards, it's completely on demand. We live in an on-demand world. So we make that service available on demand straight after that. Then we also push it out to Facebook Live, and we push it to YouTube Live as well. We've got six Atlanta area churches. And so some of them are pushing the stream out on their website and Facebook Live at the same time, some on their website and YouTube Live at the same time. And so we get roughly, I saw the numbers last week, it was about somewhere between 65 and 70,000 people watching on the Sunday from the website. But then we get a lot more views afterwards on YouTube throughout the rest of the week. That's where we start to pick up some momentum, is outside of that Sunday period.
So let me just rest on that a minute. You get about 65,000 watch live, but then you more than double that with on demand.
Yeah, well, from an on-demand point of view, that's where we start to push it out to YouTube, for example. And YouTube is the second biggest search engine in the world. So one of the strategies that we've had in play for a while now is retitling the message that's given on Sunday to something that's keyword optimized. So, for example, our teaching pastor, Andy Stanley, might give us a script and it would have just his title on the top of it. After watching that message, part of my role on Sunday is I'm looking for a way to retitle that message so it's keyword optimized and searchable on YouTube, second biggest search engine in the world. And so what we find is we have a lot of people coming onto our YouTube channel to watch the message who maybe have never heard of Andy, maybe have never heard of our church, but they're going there to have a question answered, and we are answering that question, and we're we're telling the algorithm, the YouTube algorithm, that we're ready to answer specific questions because of the way we're titling it. And then we use the YouTube description to push people to connection points, our social media feeds, our podcasts, our websites.
So YouTube's doing your evangelism for you?
Basically, yes. But it's all in the way that that strategy that we leverage to push that content out.
Okay, that's new thinking for many of us. That's exciting. Can I dive into this first question, Dave? Because for us, many of us are struggling to get into our church buildings and to use any cameras or production stuff that's there. For many of us, we're having to produce church services with iPhones and whatever phones we happen to have and whatever teenagers we happen to have around the house. How would you suggest we go about creating content that works for a Sunday service for kids, for young people, for adults? On when you can only do it like I am now, streaming from my kitchen. How do we do that for best? What would you suggest?
Well, first of all, I think we need to change our philosophy around the content that we're producing. It doesn't have to look like a regular Sunday because it's not a regular Sunday. The content that we're producing now can look different because of the world we are distributing it to is different. And so, I would suggest, first of all, let's have a shift in our philosophy. Typically, if we boil some things down, church essentially has become an event-based organization. We've got one event on a Sunday and we want everybody to come to it, or we might have a midweek event as well. So we push everybody to come to this event. But during this season, we have to shift our thinking and become content distribution companies where we're producing content and pushing it out as quickly to as many people as possible. And from a point of view, from a social media perspective, it's not about producing really good looking content. It's not about that. It's about promoting community at the moment. So I think the world that we live in and that we've been living in for a few years doesn't really care as much about the quality of the video. They care about the content and how they can engage with that content. So to answer your question straight away, you've all got a film production company right here in your pocket because you've all got a cell phone. You've all got a smartphone with a camera built into it that connects to the internet that you can use to stream live to YouTube, stream live to Instagram, stream live to Facebook. And you don't need a big production thing. In fact, I've been telling churches, don't worry about the lights and all that sort of thing. Sit in front of a window, get some natural light on your face, and just go live from that capacity. And if you can have a set of headphones in or something like that will make the audio better, that's the thing that you should be focusing on. Producing great content that encourages people to engage with you and builds community, but then also making sure that the content is as natural, as raw as possible. You think about the biggest YouTubers in the world, Duncan. They walk around with a DSLR at arm's length, and that's all they do. Yet they get millions and millions of views. Yet we're worried in church world because we don't have the lights and the stage and everything that we would typically have. We have to shift our thinking a little bit.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I went on Amazon and I think it was a $5. I bought one of those. Do you know those little kind of stands with rubbery legs that you can just set your phone on? Just gives you a bit of stability. You can set it up and create something that's a bit better.
So yeah, it can be something as simple as that, as making sure that you're not making people motion sick because you're walking around. Just set a little thing up on a tripod. I always say if you want to spend money to improve one area, improve the audio. You can get a simple microphone for about $40 that will plug into your smartphone and it'll just produce better audio. The reason for that is if being on YouTube has taught me one thing, it's that people will put up with bad video, but they don't put up with bad audio. So spend a couple of bucks and get a microphone that plugs into your smartphone. That would be my suggestion.
Dave, let me cycle back to something you said, which really disturbed me and excited me all at the same time. You said content. You're talking about content. It needs to look different. We need to think differently about a church service. Yeah. And I get, why it disturbed him is because we're all used as pastors. We're used to standing on a stage and having a bunch of people in rows in a room looking at us. Yeah. And you can curate and create a service where people don't run out of the doors because they're bored. But when you're sat in your pajamas on a sofa and the kids are coming in and out and you fancy a coffee, you can get up and, like we all do, we pause Netflix if we're in the middle of something. We nip out for a piece of toast or a cup of coffee or something. So how do we think differently? Because at the moment we're thinking, hang on a minute, we've got to do some notices, we've got to do at least 25 minutes of worship, there needs to be
Yep.
some prayer, we've got to have a
Yep.
half an hour preach from the pastor. When you say think differently about the audience that sat on the sofa, what do you mean? Can you dig into that a little bit more?
Yeah, for sure, man. You bring up so many great points because yes, we are used to standing on a stage and having a spotlight on that stage and people sitting in rows. But you know, it's funny you say that because as soon as you say that, Duncan, the thing that comes to my mind is that has only come about because the church got influenced by Greek theater culture. That meant that we had to have a stage. You go back to the first century, people were sitting around in circles talking about, you know, they would get together and sit in a synagogue that was in a circle set up, and the person preaching was right in the middle of it. Technology allows us to do that exact same thing. We can sit around with people around us, right, and be right in the heart of community simply by doing an Instagram live and going to their cell phone, for example. Something like that puts us back into that category. I think the other thing is people at the moment are stuck at home. They're sitting on their couch. And if you do a live stream to Facebook, YouTube, Instagram from your couch, then it lets people know, hey, I'm in this with you and we are all in this together. It's not about the quality of it's not about producing content. It's about promoting community. Keeps going back to that for me. Yes, we've got to do certain things. We want to promote, we might want to, we've got an event coming up or a course that we want people to sign up for or something like that. But I would encourage you to constantly use social media, use this time to invite people to conversations. Don't invite them to events. Invite them to conversations. Somebody in the chat just said, how do we go about getting people to engage with us? The formula that I've always used for social media, Duncan, is simply this: question marks are greater than periods. Question marks are greater than periods. Because when you post something with a question mark, you're inviting people to engage with you. There are so many churches around the world at the moment who are shifting the way that they're doing church. I think the church that comes to mind straight off is Life Church. One of the biggest churches in the world had an online platform. They pioneered to a large extent church online. Yet what they're doing at the moment is these short services during the week where it's Craig Rochelle with minimal lighting, with minimal technology. He's just doing a 15-minute devotion and having a guy sit next to him 6 feet apart, obviously, social distancing, but playing guitar. And then the camera just pans to him and this guy plays guitar and he's got no microphone, no anything like that. It's just a simple thing. YouVersion Bible app. They're leveraging technology so well at the moment because one of the things they're about to do is, and this isn't public yet, but mid this month, they're planning to do 2-minute devotions for the verse of the day. And they're just asking influencers and pastors to do it on their cell phone in a vertical format. Like, this is the way of the world. Video technology has changed and the expectation of video technology has changed. So anything that we can do that is raw and authentic and genuine, if that means you're doing it from your kitchen with a clock in the background, just do that. Just do that.
So, okay, thank you. Very observant. So just a point for everybody here, just a point of translation there. When you say question marks are better than periods,
yeah,
that's kind of different in our culture, because oftentimes it's periods that causes the questions. But for us, a period is a full stop. Okay, so question marks
yes.
are better than full stop. So just a little
question marks are greater than full stops. I would say that as an Aussie as well, but I've learned to translate it here in the US.
So before we get even more people leaving the stream, let me ask you a question. So if we're trying to change our thinking in terms of the content for a Sunday morning service, we'll get onto the rest of the week in a minute. But if we're trying to change the content, are you saying that we shouldn't do, or it's not the best way to do a 60-minute service that has notices and 3 songs and are we trying to break out of that template and that pattern for, which, let's face it, Dave, most people are probably sat watching a screen. They're watching probably their TV screen. And so on their TV screen, they're used to watching TV shows, funnily enough, half-an-hour programs that have a very different format to a live church event. So are you saying that 60 minutes is too long? Should it be 25 minutes? Are you saying that we should think differently about how we structure the template of the service to engage with a TV audience?
Yeah, good question, because it allows me to clarify. I'm saying the second part. We need to shift the template. I think there are a lot of churches who get so hung up on it has to look like this. How am I going to do 3 songs? How am I going to do my 30 to 40-minute message? How am I going to do that on this live thing or on this screen? And it can become disabling. And in the end, we're too scared to do anything. What I'm suggesting is we need to shift that thinking, and it doesn't have to look the way that it's always looked. It can look a little bit different. You look at YouTube. The average length of a video on YouTube is 4 minutes and 20 seconds. So I'm not saying we have to do a 4-minute and 20 seconds message, but I'm also saying we don't have to do a 60-minute fully produced church service as well. It can look super different, and it could be just a shorter thing, because you're right, sitting in front of the a TV screen watching a 60-minute program, we can pause it, we can go and do, we can duck out and get a piece of toast. But for this sort of thing, people's attention spans are a little bit shorter. And so I would suggest maybe shifting that template. It doesn't have to look like 3 songs. Maybe it's 1 song. Maybe it's a worship leader in their home. And I've seen a church in the US do this. They have a worship leader in their home that it does 2 or 3 songs on an acoustic guitar, then throws it back to the pastor who's sitting in his lounge room and is just doing a 15-minute message. And that's the church service taken care of for the day. That's how it works on Sundays. The key, I think, is what you do during the week to supplement that.
Yeah, let's get on to in the week in a minute. So would you, because I've been watching the North Point stream, and the North Point stream is very much as normal. It's hello, 3 songs, Andy speaks, and we finish. Yeah. So you guys haven't changed it up that much, I know, right now, but that's because you're still able to get into your buildings and do some high production. That's
more because we were so far planned in advance that we were able to record those before a lot of this kicked in. Now, in a few weeks from now, it might not look like that.
Okay. Yeah. I just think it's interesting, isn't it? It's worth us thinking differently. How about this is a random question really, but I've just, as a consumer of online church and real life church, I can worship with my hands in the air and tears streaming down my cheeks when I'm in a room with my brothers and sisters and the band are changing key and rocking it out. To be honest, I really struggle to do that when I'm sat with the dog and some of my family members on the sofa. How does this whole experiential, emotional connection with God thing change, or should it change?
Yes, it has changed. And I agree with you. It's a lot easier to sing in a crowded room when maybe your voice can't be heard, but when it's just 4 of you in the living room and your voice is heard, it causes people to hold back a little bit. I honestly, if I'm super honest with you, because I know it's just you and I having a chat here, I don't think that any church has really cracked the online worship thing and made it feel not awkward. One of the things that we've been experimenting with at North Point is our North Point worship team has been streaming live to YouTube from a living room a couple of nights a week. And we're getting great views on it. But I think part of the reason it's connecting a little bit is because it's a lot more intimate. Last night, we had one of our female worship leaders literally sitting on her couch with a guitar, just playing a couple of songs and praying in between each one. So we're able to get that intimacy, that connection point, even though it's through a virtual screen. But we're also keeping that really short. It lasts anywhere from 10 to 15 minutes at the most. And that might be just 2 songs and some time of prayer. So we're shifting the way that we do that to try to make it a little bit more intimate. But sometimes that means we have to do it a little bit shorter in a different environment and stripped way down.
Okay, that's great. Can I just say at this point as well to everybody who's listening, please don't think Dave or myself are trying to push one agenda. Please don't think we're trying to say there's one template and one model. All we're trying to do is to help you guys think. And that's what pastors do really well. It's what leaders do really well. They ask difficult questions. Yeah. Is what we're producing the best to help people get through this particular season of life?
Yeah, that's really good.
What we're doing is shaking things up and asking, we're not giving any, if you're doing it a different way, it's wrong. Not at all. It's just helping you think things through. So let me push
Yeah.
off that.
Can I just jump on that too? One of the things that I heard at the very start of this lockdown period was this this quote: "Isolation breeds creativity." And what I'm loving, as I've been watching, like literally church online services from around the world in the past couple of weeks, what I love seeing is people doing it so differently and thinking a little bit outside of the box. Some people are doing what, you know, being able to do what we've done at North Point, which is make it look like it's a normal service for the time being. Other churches I've seen have brought their worship team into the foyer of the building or even to the front of the building and kept them 6 feet apart. Others are doing it from their living room. I saw this great thing on Instagram the other night where Steph Curry, who's an NBA basketballer here and a believer, him and his wife got onto Instagram Live just in their living room, and they invited all of these worship leaders in, Hillsong United, Chris Tomlin, that sort of thing. And they invited them to join them on that Instagram Live. And they went for 2 hours. And I sat there with my phone up like this for 2 hours literally just watching worship leaders sing a song while Steph Curry and his wife were just watching in their living room, worshiping as well. And it was so intimate and it was so good. And what I loved about it is it was so different. The other week, Justin Bieber did a similar sort of thing. Justin Bieber's got like 20 million followers on Instagram. He went live to Instagram and sat on the couch with his wife and invited a pastor here called Judah Smith to come in and just do a devotion to them, but also to 200,000 people who are watching at the same time. It doesn't have to look like any specific thing. Isolation can breed creativity in the church, and we can make it look differently.
Dave, I love that. Isolation must breed creativity. I love that. It's great. Just dive into a couple of questions that are on the stream, and then we'll move on to my second question to you about how we think more community content. So Sarah has asked, any tips on better audio quality for worship when buying better gear isn't an option because we haven't got a Disney budget or a North Point budget?
Yeah, that's a great question. Really, it depends what your church already has. If your church already has some microphones that can plug into a cell phone, then I would say do whatever you can with that. Another thing might be just finding the right distance from the person who's singing and where you're placing the smartphone. I'm assuming you're just streaming live from a smartphone. Changing the distance can change the audio. If you're too close, it'll be loud and boomy and distorted. If you're too far away, people can't hear it. So trying to figure out that distance, trial and error, is a huge thing. One of the first things that you did, Duncan, when you got on this call was you asked somebody, is the audio okay? It's those sorts of things, and just doing some testing. And test during the week. Do some test phone calls, do some test Zoom meetings, stuff like that, where you can try to get the right distance from the microphone if you don't have a budget to buy, a little microphone that will plug into your smartphone.
Yeah, great. Thank you. A couple of pastors, quite a few pastors have been asking, they want a bit more information from you, Dave, on this idea of optimizing message titles for YouTube. Yeah. Have you got any examples of how Andy has called it one thing, which is very creative and hip, but it's intriguing more than a search thing? Have you got any examples of that where you changed it to be more optimal for YouTube?
Yeah, so again, I want to just stress, we've been doing this for a little while at North Point, and this has been something like for the past maybe 6 to 9 months, we've been trying this idea. And because we've seen such a big boost in our YouTube views as a result of it, like we've literally seen it go up and to the right, it's been something that we've just press the gas on a little bit. So typically what happens is, just to lay out what my Sunday might look like, I'll wake up Sunday morning and there'll be an email with Andy's script laid out, and it'll have a message title on it that will be something that is more, generic, something that Andy's just put onto it to keep his mind focused on what the topic might be. And really all I'm doing at that point is I'm going into, I'm watching the message. I track it with my, I track it, go through the script as he's saying it, and I'm writing down ideas of what we might call a particular message. And so I'm just looking up on YouTube now to give you an idea. So, one of the things we did this week is he called the message future thinking on the top of his script. But when we pushed it out to YouTube, we called it when faith and fear collide. And the reason we did that was because I have a keyword search tool that I use, and there's a whole bunch that you can use, some paid, some free, and I'm happy to provide some resources in the chat room in a minute on how to do that. But I just type in the topic and some questions that I think people might be asking around this topic. He did one the previous week that was about Jesus being a strong leader during a time of crisis. So, you know, what we called that message was leading in troubled times, because that's what people are typing into their search bar. So the idea behind it is we're trying to title the message the same thing. The keyword, what a keyword is, or a keyword phrase is what people are typing into that search bar on Google. Now, if somebody's searching for example, how can I be a better husband? I bet most of the churches on this call have done a marriage series at some point. So what if the title of your messages was more in line with that question, so that Google and YouTube at that point are throwing your video up as the answer to the question that people are most asking. I like to refer to it as the 0 moment of truth, which is a very consumer market term. 0 moment of truth is when Duncan, you've gone shopping online for a new clock that has London written on it, right? And you've done all the research, you've read all the reviews. The 0 moment of truth comes when you're about to hit buy. Companies pay huge amounts of money to be there, to be at the top of the list when you're at that 0 moment of truth. That's what Google calls it, 0 moment of truth. I'm about to hit buy. In the church world, we've got a 0 moment of truth as well, but it's not when somebody's saying, what's the best pair of sneakers to buy or the best clock to buy? It's when people are saying, how can I improve my marriage? How can I stop looking at porn? How can I be a better husband, a better spouse? How can I find hope? How can I stop having suicidal thoughts? They're the 0 moment of truth for us as the church. And we're producing content that answers those questions, but we're not labeling it. We're not titling those messages as questions that answer those questions. Does that make sense?
Yeah, a lot of sense. I remember a few months back, Andy did a series called You're Not the Boss of Me.
Yep.
And you titled that something very different. It was 4 or 5 messages, and no one was searching for "You're not the boss of me," but the subjects he was teaching on fear and anxiety and worry, and so you changed the titles.
Yeah, so because nobody types in "you're not the boss of me" when they're looking for questions, but people who are anxious are typing in, how do I deal with anxiety? And since that was what Andy preached about one week, that's what I titled the message. And we saw the number of views on YouTube go up and to the right, because when people punched that into the search bar, YouTube was evangelizing for us. It was throwing our video up as the answer to that question. So the number of views went up first, then also our watch time went up. People were watching our messages for a lot longer because we were actually answering the question that they were asking.
Brilliant. And that's such a simple thing to do. And it's free.
It's free. It's free.
A couple more questions before we dive into the second big question that's come out on the chat. There's a couple of people who are talking about, there seems to be a massive content. I mean, every church is bunging out shed loads of content. So my friend Leon said, how do we stand out? If everyone is lowering production values on iPhones, how do we ensure that what we do doesn't just become wallpaper? And then my friend Aileen has asked, how do we stand out and encourage engagement in the midst of so much content being produced?
Yeah, great questions. I would say try to stand out to your community. Try to stand out to the people who live in the community that your church is based. Don't try to stand out to everybody in all of the UK or Europe or the world. Try to stand out to the people who are living in your neighborhood. And the reason for that is what they're feeling, you're probably feeling as well. And if you can speak directly to that, that's when you will stand out. That moment of authenticity and genuineness, I think, is what makes you stand out and invite people to come and join you. One of the pastors that I have been working with here in the US, they were telling me that they've been pushing their messages to YouTube for like a year and a half, and they're getting a certain number of views that they're happy with. But last week, he went to YouTube Live while he was walking around the block, just taking the dog for a walk. He went to YouTube Live, he got on and he just said, hey, I'm taking my dog for a walk, and I just wanted to pray for people. So if you've got a prayer request, just type it in the comments, the chat section, and I'm going to read it, and then I'm going to pray for you. And literally he did that for like 20 minutes. That video has like 4 times, he was telling me, 4 times as many views as any message he's ever preached. And he's like, I don't know why I've put all my time and energy into creating messages. Nobody watches when I could take my dog for a walk and I get 4 times as many views. The power of that was just the power of the authenticity, that raw moment of somebody typing something into a chat and him responding to it in real time and just praying live for that person. He wasn't sitting there with his hands up on the screen and his eyes closed because he was walking his dog, but he was just having this genuine, raw, real conversation with God on that person's behalf. And people felt that connection to it. And so I would be encouraging all the pastors on this channel, do that. Do that. I've created this document, which I'm going to give to Duncan so he can pass on to you, literally a step-by-step guide on how you can go onto Instagram Live and do exactly the same thing, how you can go on YouTube Live and do exactly that same thing. Such a great idea that was ministering to the people in an immediate way. So again, do something like that, walk around your neighborhood and just invite people to pray with you.
That is such a cool idea. I love that. And it's, again, so doable. So Dave's created 2 documents, Instagram Live, a step-by-step guide, and Facebook Live, a step-by-step guide as well. So he's going to give us those, and I'll make sure you get hold of those because I've got all your emails. Okay, let's push on to the first big question. I think we've covered lots of stuff there. Please keep chatting about it. Hashtag Ask Dave if you want to do it on social media. Dave will pick that up later. But yeah, so we talked about how we continue to create content when we're forced to stay at home. Second question, Dave, you talked a lot about community and connection is better than content. So how do we take the momentum of Sundays into Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday? How do we engage people? Some kind of a calendar of engaging people on a regular basis that isn't haphazard and hit and miss, but makes a difference.
Yeah, so as somebody who's been doing online stuff and social media for a while now, I've been pushing this idea that to as many people as I can get in front of, that, you know, we get to, in the old days, and when I say old days, like last month, earlier this year when we could actually meet in our buildings, back then we would connect with people for 1 hour a week every Sunday at church, right? But I always said you can stay connected with those same people for the other 167 hours of the week on social media. But we never did that. But now's the time for us to be doing that. Studies that have come out in the past week have shown a couple of things. One, clearly, and obviously, more people than ever are spending more time online than they've ever spent online before. Zoom is now the #1 downloaded app in the US App Store, both Google and Apple. Because it's video conferencing. Facebook and Instagram saw a 40% increase in activity in the first week of the shutdown, and Facebook Live and Instagram Live have doubled in the past week and a half. So everybody is spending more and more time online. Everybody's isolated, and people want to connect with people because we can't connect physically. So I would be encouraging all the pastors, get on once a day and just do an Instagram Live, do a Facebook Live, just start posting a little bit differently. I know some churches who sent out an email to the entire church and said, hey, here's a link to a YouVersion reading plan. We're going to do this together for the next 30 days. And so this church is leveraging that technology to keep everybody together to do a whole church Bible study, which they've never done before. I've created another document, which Duncan, again, I'll give to you so you can pass it out, but it's basically a content calendar of how you can connect with people in different ways on different days of the week. We have to now more than ever stay engaged with people. I always put it this way. You know, the Apostle Paul used the technology of his day to connect people with each other, to grow the church, and to connect people with God. Now, the technology of his day was letter writing. I know your son's in the audience, so I just want to explain it to him. Dude, letter writing is when you take a pen and you press it down onto paper and you move your wrists around. That was the technology of Paul's day, right? And he leveraged it. Well, the technology of our day is Zoom, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Google. We need to, as church leaders, we need to follow Paul's example and do exactly the same thing. Leverage the technology of our day to connect people with each other, to grow our church community, and to connect people to God. So again, isolation breeds creativity. Be creative in the way that you're doing that. It doesn't have to take a long time. This pastor that I referred to earlier, took his dog for a walk, and prayed for people as he did it. It didn't take much time out of his day. It wasn't an extra thing he had to study and prepare for and get lighting and production people in. He did it really simply, and it made such a strong connection. Be raw, be real, be consistent.
That's great. Be consistent. Somebody said to me on a call I was on this week, what do you think is the one big thing that everybody is wanting right now? Because we're all isolated, we're all worried, we're all in fear for our jobs and our health, our families. What is it that people want more than anything else? And like you say, Dave, I think over and above everything else, it's connection. I read somewhere that Zoom is now worth more than the 5 biggest airlines in the world combined. I mean, because like you say, people are diving on these platforms because they miss physical connection. I mean, I think social distancing is such an unfortunate term. I don't think we should be social distancing. Without a doubt, we must be physically distancing. That's the only way to stop this virus. We need to distance ourselves physically, but we mustn't distance ourselves socially. And Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, all these different platforms give us Zoom, give us a great opportunity to connect. And I think that's what people want. And for goodness sake, if the church can't offer connection and community, who can? We're specialists at this.
Yeah, exactly. And why do we're all about community. We're all about connection. We call it welcome to the family, welcome home. We use these slogans in our buildings all the time, right? But now it's welcome home to the family on your smartphone or on your video conferencing call. Like, we can still do exactly the same thing. And people want that. And people come together like that because they're trying to find hope. We, as the church, we should be the biggest dealers of hope in the world. And if we can put people together in community and offer them hope, give them hope about when it comes to their anxieties and their fears, and just let them see that there's a greater purpose, that there's a greater purpose that will dominate long after this, then people will start to connect with that.
So Dave, I think we've got the why really strongly, why we need to be connecting with people Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Give us a little bit of how. How would you recommend we go about it? Again, we haven't got huge staff teams, big budgets. Yep. We've got iPhones and Instagram accounts, and that's about it. So how do we connect in a way that people really will find helpful?
Okay, so there's 2 parts to the how, right? The first part to the how is the technology that's involved. And you just listed a couple. So there's Facebook, there's Instagram, there's Twitter. These are ways that, there's YouTube, ways that you can actually go live or upload pre-prepared content and just start distributing it out there. Again, you don't need a big production stuff. You don't need a big DSLR. You can do it with just your smartphone. And so start doing that, start creating that content and start to push it out to these platforms that we all know that have always been there, but we just leverage them in a different way. We use them to invite people to events. Now it's time to invite people to conversations. So start shifting your mentality in that way. So anything that you post to Instagram, forget the live stuff for a second. If you're posting to Instagram, you need to ask questions as part of that. Don't post photos of just your food anymore or your feet while you're sitting beside the pool or something. Start posting real questions that are engaging people in a conversation. So there's the technological side, and then there's the strategy side. I just sort of covered both then. Like, you leverage Instagram, that's a technology. The strategy is use question marks instead of full stops, because that's going to invite people into a conversation, right? But then think outside of the box. Don't just think of those big things like Zoom or Instagram. There are so many other technologies out there that we've had for years, but we've never leveraged them in this way. I was telling Duncan earlier today, I'm leveraging Marco Polo right now a heck of a lot. It's this ridiculous app that has always sat on my phone, but I just never used it. Now I'm using it all the time. It's a way to send really quick videos to people, and it sends them instantly to them, and it tells you when they're on. What if a pastor of a smaller church could Marco Polo most of his church? Use texting. I was talking to a church yesterday, and I said, what you need to do is, because your church is small enough, text people. That's a technology that we've always had, but we've never really leveraged in the church. Also, again, this is kind of more for Matt and the younger people. These things actually do things called phone calls. You can actually talk on this. Why aren't we talking? Let's start talking again. In fact, here in the US, the big telecommunications companies are saying that people actually using their phones to talk to other people has jumped up 80%. So you can do things like simple phone calls that will connect people. So there's all this technology out there. It's just us leveraging it in a way that's inviting people to come into our home, right? Our kitchen, wherever it is that we are, and having a conversation with them and saying to them, hey, I'm feeling what you're feeling, but we're all in this together. That's the great thing about the church family. You guys are in the UK, you guys are in a different situation than I am, but I feel like, you know, Duncan, you're not just my good mate, you're part of my family. So we need to be promoting that idea as well.
Dave, this has helped really. I'm getting so many text messages and comments of people saying this is so helpful, so rich. Thank you.
Good.
So how should we systematize that? I mean, is it just hit and miss? Do we just take the dog for a walk and think, oh, I'll jump on Facebook? Or should there be a sense of Monday, I'm going to do this, Tuesday, I'm going to do that, Wednesday, I'm going to do this?
Yes, I think if you can systematize it, then it's one thing out of your brain that you don't have to think about, because you can look and go, okay, this is what I'm doing today. I would go further and schedule it, put it into your calendar to do that. You're going to go live, you're going to promote this, produce this content or whatever it might be, and then just start pushing it out. So yes, I would say systematize it. That's why I created that content calendar PDF, just to give people ideas of technology that they can use and ways that they can use it as well. This is something I do in my regular day. I literally have two sections scheduled on my calendar. One is to post to social media at a certain time, and then later in the day, like around 5:30 or something like that, I have a thing that says respond to people online. This is the other thing, man. We have to, as the church, we have to be responding to the people who are reaching out to us. We get, you know, I've seen so many churches that are posting good content, and then people are asking all these questions in the comments and nobody's responding to them. This is the time when we have to be making time to respond to the people who are trying to connect with us on social media, answering all their questions. Even just liking their comment is a big thing. But if you're going to respond to them, use their name. I really go out of my way to do this on my own personal stuff. Is I try to respond with the person's name. Hey, Duncan, that's a great question. I think this is the answer. Just by using somebody's name makes it so much more personal.
And like any, it's supposed to be a conversation, like any great conversation. If you use someone's name and then respond with a question to them to say, look, this is what I think. Does that work for you? What do you think about this? How would you do it?
Exactly. That's that question mark, right? Question marks are greater than full stops. Like, we have to just ask a question. And here's the thing, just to make it super strategic for you, not only are you going to be rewarded by building a stronger, deeper community that's more engaged with you, but you're going to be rewarded by Instagram and Facebook as well. Because when they see a long chat going on in a comment section, your next post will get extra boost, extra algorithm influence. So there's two reasons to be doing it. Not only for, yes, the algorithm being on your side is super helpful, but more importantly than that, you're going to be rewarded by your local community. I would be suggesting doing things that are a little bit outside of the box. Hey, if your church building has a bunch of TP stocked up because it's not being used anymore because nobody's going into the office, bring it home, get onto Facebook Neighborhood or Facebook Marketplace. Say, I've got free toilet paper right here. What Facebook Marketplace does is anybody in a 5-mile radius gets a notification that you're selling something, but you're not selling anything. You're going to give it away. People will come to you for a physical need that they have of TP. And then you don't have to hit them with anything, but they just know that they are loved and that they're getting generosity poured out onto them. This is my hope for the capital C church, that at the end of this, here's the deal. We are going to get through this. There's going to be a point where we look back on this in hindsight. My hope is that when the world starts looking back on this in hindsight, that their thought is, man, that was a tough time, but the church stepped up and they were the most generous, engaged, connected people that I know. You know what? That church in my community, I don't know if I agree with what they say about the Bible or that whole Jesus thing, but man, in my time of need, they showed up with free toilet paper. They showed up and delivered my groceries, like things like that. That's what I want the world to look back on this time and think of the church in a new way.
Shall I just close in prayer there? Because I just noticed in the chat, someone went, "Preach it, brother." I mean, that's exactly what we all hope for. That's such a great reminder. One of the other things, this conversation I had a while ago with a pastor who said, "What do you think people need more than anything else?" And I said, connection. I also said, I think that a very close second to that is a sense of purpose.
Yeah.
You know, when we're out at work and when we're running our family and when we're doing ministry, we feel a sense of purpose. And for many of us, we've become purposeless because we can't work, we can't get out, we can't do the things we normally do. And in fact, boredom has taken over for so many people. And systematizing, calendarizing social media, maybe it gives us a chance to give people a sense of purpose. So you can go to someone who's really great, you know, maybe young, maybe into music, and say, look, what I want you to do is Big Tune Tuesday. I want you to provide me with a Spotify playlist of your top 10 songs to take the dog for a walk on. I want top 10 worship songs. And then I want you to run a social media feed on whether J-Lo is better than Madonna. And then I want you to do a little music quiz. But Tuesday's all about music. You're into music. That's your thing. Now suddenly this purposeless, bored person says, I've got a role to play. I've got a ministry to play. And we could find that throughout the week. We could be putting on Zoom conversations with experts in our church who are great at tax or business or anxiety or mental health or whatever, and say, look, you run. We'll set up a course. We're going to get 10 people on each Zoom call who register for it, book in for it. And it's a great way to involve the community in our church. And we don't have to leave our lounge or our kitchen to do it. So I think giving people a sense of purpose beyond a Sunday throughout the week, we can get people still serving, still volunteering, and we can reach out at the same time.
I love that, dude. And you just had a great idea that I want people to write down. Another technology, Spotify. Put Spotify lists out that encourage people, right? But be producing this content. One of our churches here in Atlanta, Buckhead Church, what they did when this whole thing started was they started doing daily podcasts that are only 10 minutes long, and they post it to YouTube as well. And most of the time, it's like you just said, Duncan, it's a Zoom conference call with somebody who's a work from home specialist giving tips on how you can be more productive when you're working from home, which we're all doing. Then the next one was with a parenting person about how to parent during the COVID-19 pandemic. What do you talk to your kids about? Another one was from a homeschool expert. You've probably got these people in your church community or in your community at large. Invite them to come in. One of the churches in Australia that's part of our North Point network, they invited the mayor of Perth to come, and the pastor just interviewed him about what's going on in Perth, what's the best thing for us as Perth residents to do. Like, those sorts of things can happen on Zoom. We just have to think outside of the box, but create content that's helping people get through a difficult situation. They're great ideas, man.
Yeah, that's a fantastic idea. I mean, at the moment, I feel it acutely because my wife's an intensive care nurse. But this whole hashtag NHS is big in our country. You know, the nurses and doctors are on the front line. And to interview some of those, because it's such a hot subject right now, would be a great way to get our community to lean into us, and then we can use those conversations to point them to what we do elsewhere. Brilliant. A couple of questions, Dave, before we move on to the final big question. So Dan's asked, should pastors use personal or church accounts on Facebook and Instagram to connect? That's a great question.
Yeah, I could go either way with it. In fact, I would say mix it up. On Sundays when you're producing that sort of content, definitely do it from the church account, but maybe there's 2 or 3 days a week where you go from your own account, because people need to feel that personal touch. Like, you look at, I don't know if this is happening in the UK, but over here, just about every major business that you connect with, whether it's Uber, whether it's Delta, the airline, they're all sending, Amazon has done it as well. They're sending out emails from their CEOs that are really personal to them. So they're leveraging both platforms. So I would say do the same in the church, leverage both platforms. Maybe Sundays and Wednesdays you go from the church account, but then for these other smaller things, when you're out walking the dog and praying for people, just do it from your personal one. If you're doing a night of worship, like say your worship leader is going to just play guitar and sit on their stool, that I would say send that out from the church account, but then they could do other things from a personal account. Yeah,
let's mix it up. I like that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Chris has asked a great question. We use all this tech to connect people to us, the church. But is there anything that you know that helps people, sort of technology that helps people not just to connect with us, but to connect with each other?
Yeah, so Marco Polo is a good one for that. There's a lot of apps over here in the States, and I don't know if they're available in the UK, but there's one called Neighborhood, where literally when you sign up, it pinpoints where you are and it connects you with your neighbors. I don't know if there'd be something like that. There's another one called Next Door. Maybe if somebody who knows if these are available in the UK could put it in the chat. Those sorts of things help you connect with your immediate neighborhood. And that's what I love about those apps specifically, because that's where people will say, hey, I need somebody, I'm going out. This is where a Christian in that neighborhood could say, hey, I'm doing a supermarket run. Does anybody need anything? And they can connect together as a neighborhood together. And again, it leads to that thing, that hope that I have, that at the end of this, people in that neighborhood would say, that Duncan guy, I don't know if I agree with the whole heaven thing he always talks about, but man, he went out several times for the whole neighborhood and brought home groceries, and we all pulled money together and we Venmo'd them. Next Door is available in the UK, somebody just said. So leverage those things to connect with people in your neighborhood. That's the best. I think that there are apps available. You just need to leverage them and do some research.
Yeah, I mean, Zoom is a great way, not necessarily to sit and do what we're doing and have content poured out, but just conversation. You could gather 10 people together to pray, to chat. You could gather mums together. You could gather single dads together, gather teenagers together.
Yeah, and Zoom is free. You can have up to 40 minutes on a free account, but Zoom has actually opened that up so that even free accounts now get a lot longer to connect with each other. So leverage that as a tool to connect people in your neighborhood. This is how we've been doing small groups at North Point, even with like my two teenage daughters are both in high school. They had their high school small groups on a Zoom chat on Sunday. So we're leveraging those sorts of tools to keep the small group thing happening. I've created a document that I'll give to you, Duncan, so that you can pass it on to everybody on how to use Zoom, how to set it up, and what are the best practices. I created another one that is how to do online small groups that leverages 5 different sorts of Zoom style technologies that you can leverage to do small groups in your church, all of which are free.
Wow. And that doesn't just connect people to us, but connects people to each other as well.
Connects people to each other. That's the key.
Okay, another question from Russ, which is again a great question. Like you say, my Instagram and all my Twitter feeds seem to be exploding.
Yeah.
More people are posting more things. Some serious, some pull tears from my eyes, and some are just lots of fun. Kids kicking toilet rolls around the back garden. It's hilarious. But Russ has asked a great question. He said, "Look, is overload possible? When is too much content just too much? Is there a danger of overloading content? Should we temper how much we put out?"
Yeah. So the short answer is yes, I think it is, but I don't know if we've reached that, and we don't know that we've reached it until we feel overloaded. So again, for me, the key here is we've always been told that content is king on social media. I would argue, and have argued for a while now, that engagement is king. Content is queen. You've got to get engagement. People don't get overloaded from engagement. They get overloaded from content that's just going out and pushing. So you come to this thing, do that thing, buy this product. That's when people feel overloaded. But if people are connecting and engaging with you, I don't think people get overloaded with that. I don't think we ever say, you know what, I'm just too close to Duncan. He's too helpful. He's too willing to pray for me. People don't get tired of that sort of thing. So it's about what we're putting out and how we're connecting and engaging with the people who are seeing our content online.
And how do you juggle? I don't know if this is somebody's asked the question about laughter and relief. How much should we as a church, be devotional and serious? And is there a place for levity and fun in all of this as well?
Man, I think there's more of a case for that now than ever. John Krasinski here in the States just started a thing called Some Good News. It's a little YouTube news show that he started doing, and I would encourage you all to go and check it out. It's called Some Good News, John Krasinski, and literally all he's doing is pulling together all of these great news stories, like the kids kicking toilet paper rolls around, and putting them into one 20-minute show. But he does it with humor. He does it, the production is super low. Like it's literally him with a sign behind his head that was drawn by his daughters. That's just as some good news. But it makes you smile, and it reminds you that there's hope. It reminds you that there's fun out in the world. So if you're capable of producing stuff like that, for sure do it. But obviously you want to make sure that you're not being insensitive.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. So we've covered two big questions, Dave. We've talked about the kind of content we should be creating. Should church be an hour? Should it look the same? There's some really good stuff you've helped us with there, and we're grateful for that. And then we talked a lot about how we take that momentum into the week online. Just one final question on that, and then we'll move on to our last question, and we'll be done in 5-10 minutes or so. And we'll have some Q&A together as well. What we tend to do as pastors and as preachers is we get to the end of our service. We've had our songs, we've had the preach, we might have had a bit of response time. And then the pastor famously stands up and says, well, it's been great to have you here all today. We'll see you next Sunday. And I've noticed quite a few people on their streams are saying exactly the same thing. They get to the end of their hour on the stream and they say, so glad you've joined us online. Please join us again online next Sunday. We're back here. Should there be a different phrase in there?
Yes, there should be. So first of all, they're not here, right? They're watching from there here. So I would be rewording that to something like, hey, thank you so much for being part of our church today. That just changes it from a location-based thing to a participation-based thing. So thank you so much for being part of our church today. And then I would add to that, we hope we can stay connected with you during the week on social media. Something as simple as that shifts the conversation to away from, hey, we only care about whether or not you attend on Sunday, to we want to stay connected with you during the week. It builds in the process of what's happening during the rest of the week in that one statement. Oh, my church wants to stay connected with me. Oh, okay, cool. And think about it. I don't know why we haven't been doing this in the past. Since Jesus set the standard for this, it's just following him. He spent 3 years with his disciples and he was with them 24/7. They saw him in every environment, in every capacity. We just have to do the same. And we invite people to do that when we shift our language to be, yes, it's so great that you're part of our church today. And we hope we can stay connected with you during the week on social media.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I saw one church, I was watching one church stream, and I thought the pastor totally nailed it at the end. He got to the end and he said, rather than saying, glad that you've been here with us, because they have, like you say, he said, hasn't it been good to be together?
Yeah.
Which I thought was lovely. And then he said, you know what? We live online and we want to keep the conversation going with you through the rest of the week. And when he said goodbye, the next slide that came up was how you get hold of them on Instagram and Facebook, and how you connect with them online. I thought that was a brilliant way of saying, this isn't finished here. We want to be involved with you for the other 167 hours of the week.
Yeah, that's a great way to do it. And if you've got a chat going, because you're doing it on Facebook Live or YouTube Live or something, don't just have a slide with the account details. Post the URL into the chat so that people can just click on it and they're there.
Yeah, that's a great idea. So we're going to move on to finishing off, see if anybody else. So now's the time to get those questions in. If you want to get those questions into Dave, ask Dave. And if you're doing it on social media, or just bung them in the chat, which is probably the easier thing to do. But kind of the final question, Dave, we talked about content, we've talked about connecting with people through the rest of the week. What about technology in terms of streaming our services? Churches who are part of this network that I'm the director of, the Further Faster network, we're streaming. Some of them are choosing to record their services ahead of time, and some of them are streaming them on live, and they're using YouTube and a variety of different streaming services to do that.
Yeah.
How do we go about this idea of streaming what we do on a Sunday? What's the best technology to use? What's the best platforms to use?
Yeah. So there's a couple of different platforms. Churches that were thinking through the idea of online church a couple of years ago, a lot of them spent time building their own platforms, which is what we did. We have a purpose-built at Northmont. We have a purpose-built website where we stream from. But Life Church has pulled out a couple of years ago, they produced something called the Church Online Platform, which you can find, and it's a free product, and you can download it and you can start streaming on that. It does take a little while to set up, so that's something to consider. It might take a few days or so for you to get your head around how that might work. But I would be encouraging people from a free perspective to either use Facebook Live or YouTube Live, either of those two things. Now, I know sometimes when we think through, I'm going to stream this live, we start to get concerned about the production quality. We start to get concerns about whether or not our Wi-Fi capabilities will interrupt the stream or anything along those lines. So if you're worried about that at all, I would say pre-record the content and then do a simulated live. And there's a bunch of different ways you could do that. One is on YouTube. You can do it as a live event and upload your video to a platform called OBS. The link, if you're interested in it, is obsproject.com, completely free. You upload your video to that software and it streams it to YouTube for you for free. And it does it as the simulated live. So anybody who's watching that on your on YouTube Live that particular day, to them, it would just look like a live video. They wouldn't know that it was pre-recorded. I wouldn't say hide that. I would just say, let them know. This is how we've been doing our North Point worship live events throughout this whole period, this whole season. We've been doing that through OBS, a simulated live pre-recorded. You can do the same thing on Facebook Live through the same product, OBS, obsproject.com, obsproject.com. And you can stream to Facebook Live, a pre-recorded event as well. And so I would say if you're worried at all about being able to pull off a live event, pre-record the whole thing, even just on iPhones, and then run it through some sort of software that simulates it live. Another great option from a Facebook point of view is to do either Facebook Premiere. When you upload it, you select Facebook Premiere and you can set the time that it goes. So that way the whole community comes together and watches it at the same time. Or you can stream your event on Sunday and then midweek do a Facebook watch party that allows, again, all the people to come together into one place and almost have like a live stream happening because everybody can comment and all those sorts of things. So there's a couple of free platforms you can use. Church Online, from the Church Online platform from Life Church, and Facebook Live and YouTube Live.
Brilliant. Thanks, Dave. I think that's really helpful. Really helpful.
Yeah.
I couldn't hear what you said.
Well, Siri's talking to you now.
Yeah.
Great as that. So one final question from me that's jumped up on the stream, which I think is a great question, is, so if we want to make some of these online groups available to our community, we know how to contact our church people. They're all on our databases. But how do we do a stream about parenting or whatever and make it available and advertise it to those who don't normally connect with us and don't normally come to church?
So you're talking about distributing that out now?
Well, if we're going to do, if we say we're going to do a Zoom group,
Yeah.
with a webinar type thing or a discussion type thing, where you're trying to get mums together, or you're trying to get teenagers, how do you connect with other people outside of the church to do that? Is there a way of advertising those groups beyond just?
Yeah. So first of all, I would say keyword title the topic and make the topic very specific. So if it's a mums group, if it's a how to get, like, I think a good one at the moment would be how to be productive when working from home. And if you've got some experts who could do that, just push out a web link in the same way that you did. If you're going to do it on Zoom, you send out emails saying, here's how we do it. And you walk people through that process. You could also push that out onto Facebook and Twitter. You could also do a short little video that goes out onto YouTube that says, hey, we're going to have this Zoom event happening in our neighborhood here where we're talking to this expert on productivity at home, and push that out as a YouTube video and keyword title that as well. So all of those processes are the same sorts of things we would normally do when we're promoting an event for our church. But this time it's just got to be more content specific so that we're pulling people together for the right reasons to talk about the right topics that helps them get through what they're currently going through. Yeah, great. Thanks, Dave. So one other question here, and then I want to just, you've got a whole bunch of freebies that you want to give us that I've seen, and they are incredibly helpful. And I'm really grateful that you've done them for us and taken the time to do that, because I think they're going to help people. So I'll tell them how they can get hold of that. But just before I tell them that, there's one other question, which is a great question. People want your thoughts, Dave, about who should be our primary audience for our Sunday
live stream of our service? You know, is it
Yeah.
our church people, the people we're trying to keep connecting with, or is it the people who don't normally go to church who might come across our live stream, or maybe our folks are inviting them to come and join the party, as it were? So who should it primarily be for?
Yeah, that's a great question. Philosophically, I think church Sunday services should always be about the people who are the first-time guests, who are maybe checking out, checking out Christianity, the people or faith, the people who I would say would give the unflattering title unchurched people. So I would say that should always be our primary audience. So being aware that when you're doing a live stream, that somebody who's not connected with God in any way, shape, or form, it doesn't have faith, might be watching it. Be aware that they might be watching it. They might find it on YouTube because your keywords titled it so well that somebody who doesn't even believe in God is starting to watch your content. So make sure your language suits somebody who doesn't have the same faith beliefs that you have. So, little things like if you're talking about, if you're preaching from a letter written by Paul, explain to people who Paul is. Don't just assume that they already know who Paul is. We all know who Paul is. And I can say, hey, the Apostle Paul did this, this, and this. But if I was talking to my unchurched family members, for example, I would say, hey, so this guy, Paul, who was one of the first followers of Jesus, and actually was a guy who stepped into history as somebody who was anti-Christians. Like, he was actually persecuting the Christians. So if you're watching this and you don't really know how you feel about Christians, and maybe you don't like Christians, Paul is your guy. He was a guy who said this, and then I would go on and say what Paul said. Does that make sense? So I'm assuming that that person's in the room and they're listening. So I would say your live stream should assume there are unchurched people who are watching it. Then during the week, when you go onto your Instagram live, when you go onto YouTube live, Facebook, in your Facebook groups, whatever it is, that's when you're talking more to the people who are already following you. So that's when you're talking to the family. That's where you can be a little bit more personal, a little bit more authentic, maybe do a little bit more family business. So to put that into a nice little nutshell, I would say your live stream of a Sunday is like you're out on the street in front of your house, whereas during the week, the stuff you do on social media should be like they're in your kitchen. Different audiences that depending on what location you're in.
Yeah, that's really helpful. And I would totally agree with you. That's really helpful, Dave. Listen, just before we go, because our time has run out now, a couple of things. One, if people still have questions for you and maybe want to get hold of you and thank you and send you some spare toilet rolls, because I know you're running out of well, how do we get hold of you? Is that possible? Can we keep the conversation going?
I would absolutely love, especially the free toilet rolls, because you can see here that I'm running low at the moment. So yeah, any toilet rolls you can send would be awesome. Look, yeah, I honestly, my heart is to help the Capital C Church as much as I possibly can. So there's a couple of ways. You can contact me on social media through all the social media things. I'm Aussie Dave, AUSSIE, on all the social media stuff. But I'm also going to type right now my email address into the chat. And you can all, this is just my regular work email address. And I want you to all leverage this if you've got any questions about anything. If there's anything that you think I might be able to help with, don't hesitate. Don't think, I don't want to send that. No, please. I just want to help, and I want to serve you as much as I possibly can. So connect with me on that email address is the easiest way. Connect with me on social media through DMs. I'm always responsive to all that sort of stuff. So make sure you do that. Also, I put in a YouTube link into the chat. If you're looking at that, wondering what that is a YouTube video that I did a couple of weeks ago on how to live stream to YouTube Live, and it works for Facebook Live as well, and what software and all that sort of thing that you can get. So I just wanted to make sure you all had that too.
That's really helpful. Thanks. You know what, Dave? Most of us have got Instagram accounts, and most of us would have 50, 60, maybe 100, 200, 300, maybe for some of us followers. Your Instagram account, I just pulled it up. Your Instagram account has got 50,000 or nearly 51,000 followers. Yeah. And yet you put your phone number on that. If people were in trouble, they could call you or text you. Yeah. What was that about?
Yeah, that was something I started doing because what I realized is, and this ties into what we've already been talking about, right? I've got nearly 51,000 people who follow me on Instagram, which is weird because this year, all I'm doing is I'm posting a devotion and teaching them Hebrew words. Literally every post I do is about a Hebrew word. It's the weirdest thing. So 50,000 people want to learn Hebrew from an Australian, which is even funnier now that I think about it. But what I realized is that's a very public format. And I would ask people, hey, if you need prayer, leave me a comment. And I would get some comments. I would get a lot of DMs. And so I realized some people wanted to be a little bit more personal. But what I've realized is this cell phone, texting is the most personal tool on on technology. It's the most personal technological tool is our texts. Studies show that if you use Mailchimp or some sort of mail app to send out mass emails, a really good open rate is 20%. If you get 20%, that's massive. On Facebook and Instagram, if you get 5% engagement, that's huge. When it comes to texting, the open rate on a text is 97%. Think about that. How often do you get a text and don't open it? No, you open it either straight away or you open it within a couple of minutes, right? So what I just decided was, if I'm a pastor and I'm an online pastor, I'm a digital pastor, I'm a social media pastor, this is my opportunity to have somebody text me. It's like having a coffee with them one-on-one. It's just super private and it's super personal, which is the key. And so, yeah, I get people I give out my phone number to 50-something thousand people in the hope that I can build a bridge and hopefully counsel somebody and pastorally care for somebody in a digital way.
That's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that, Dave. Listen,
Yeah.
we're going to need to wrap this up. I've got 6 of your resources that we're going to send out to everybody. Also, the other thing is this conversation has been recorded. So I'll make sure once I get it off of Zoom, I'll get that out to you guys as well, so that you can share that with the rest of your team. The other thing is I'd love to run some more of these conversations. So we were planning to have a conference in June. We had one last year and it was brilliant with pastors, and some of your colleagues from North Point came over and helped us with that conference. Many of us on the call today were at that conference. It's looking unlikely, obviously, that we're going to run that conference in June. So we're going to try and do something online, have more of these kind of conversations.
Yeah.
So I'll keep everybody up to date with what's going on, and we'll keep talking and we'll keep pushing forward in trying to make church exactly what she needs to be for people who are going through the crisis that we're all going through right now. So Dave, if there was some way in which all 80 of us could give a round of applause, we genuinely would. We appreciate your time. I know it's early in the morning for you, and you know, it's great. So thank you, my friend. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm so glad that I got the opportunity to do this. And again, please, guys, email me, reach out in whatever way you can, because I'm just here to help.
Great. So this is what the Further Faster Network does. It's a network of people who want to reach unchurched people, and we want to do all we can to help you to do that. You know where our website is, because that's where you registered. You can contact us through that, and we'll keep the conversation going. But for now, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me and Dave in this conversation. There will be more, and we'll let you know all about it. Have a great afternoon, and I look forward to diving into your streams and seeing what's going on in your church on Sunday and through the rest of the week. God bless everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. See you, Dave.
See ya.